The Shunned house stood on Benefit Street, a relic of a bygone era. It was a testament to time and tragedy, its brick facade crumbling under the weight of years and whispers. The house had always been avoided. Locals would cross the street rather than walk past its darkened windows. Children whispered tales of eerie lights and spectral figures. The house was more than just old, it was steeped in a palpable dread. Its very foundation seemed to resonate with the weight of countless untold stories. The history of the house was murky, lost in the mists of time, but one thing was certain: tragedy clung to it like a shroud. A sense of sorrow permeated the very air around it. From the beginning, the house seemed intertwined with death. Its construction coincided with the establishment of a burial ground nearby. This proximity to the dead cast a pall over the house. It was as if the barrier between the living and the departed was thin, dangerously thin. The land on which the house stood had once been part of this forgotten graveyard. Stories circulated of bodies unearthed during the house's construction. Unsettled spirits were said to roam the property, disturbed from their eternal slumber. This connection to the afterlife fueled the stories. It gave credence to the chilling tales whispered in hushed tones. The Shunned house was not merely a dwelling, it was a gateway, a portal to something dark and ancient. Over the years, the Shunned house had seen its share of occupants, yet none stayed long. Families moved in with hopes and dreams, only to flee in terror. They left behind their belongings. Some even abandoned cherished possessions, unwilling to risk another moment within those cursed walls. The stories they carried with them into the world painted a grim picture, a picture of an entity unseen yet ever present. Death, it seemed, was a frequent visitor to the house, but these were not peaceful passings. The deaths within the Shunned house were shrouded in mystery. Each one was more bizarre, more unsettling than the last.
One death certificate mentioned a strange wasting disease, a slow and agonizing decline with no known cause.
Another spoke of a sudden madness that gripped a young woman. She had been driven to tear at her own flesh, her screams echoing through the empty halls. These accounts, though fragmented and scattered, hinted at a pattern, a sinister force lurking beneath the surface. The stories whispered of sudden chills, disembodied voices, objects moved inexplicably, doors creaked open and closed on their own. There were tales of shadowy figures glimpsed in the periphery, apparitions that vanished as quickly as they appeared. These incidents, dismissed by some as tricks of the mind, were all too real for those who lived them. One particular story sent shivers down the spines of locals. A young boy claimed to have seen a woman in a long flowing gown standing on the staircase. Her face, pale and gaunt, was locked in a silent scream. The boy, traumatized by the encounter, refused to return to the house. His parents, initially skeptical, were convinced by the sheer terror in their son's eyes. Something was deeply, terribly wrong within the walls of the Shunned house. Among the many disturbing tales associated with the Shunned house, one stood out for its sheer strangeness. People claimed to have heard faint whispers coming from the house. These were not in English, but in a language both beautiful and unsettling, French. The whispers were often accompanied by a sense of dread, an oppressive feeling that sent shivers down the bravest of spines. It was as if the house itself was speaking, confessing its dark secrets in a tongue not its own. The French language was not commonly spoken in the area, so the presence of these whispers was all the more eerie. Some speculated that the whispers were remnants of past residents. Perhaps a French family had once met a tragic end within the house's walls. Whatever their origin, the whispers added another layer of unease to the already disturbing history of the Shunned house. They were a reminder that some secrets refused to stay buried.
One chilling account spoke of a man driven to madness by the whispers. He had been a skeptic, scoffing at the tales of the supernatural, that is, until he heard the whispers himself. At first they were faint, almost indistinguishable, but night after night, The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to seep into his dreams, haunting his waking hours. The man became withdrawn, his sanity slowly unraveling. He would spend hours muttering to himself in broken French, his eyes wide with terror. Eventually he was taken away, raving and incoherent, a victim of the whispers that haunted the shunned house.
I had always been drawn to the strange and unexplained. The shunned house, with its air of mystery and tragedy, became an irresistible enigma. I was determined to uncover the truth, to delve into its history and unearth the source of its malevolent aura. Armed with my grandfather's journal, a collection of local law and historical records, I began my investigation. I felt a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. This was no ordinary house. It was a puzzle box of secrets waiting to be unlocked. My grandfather, a respected historian, had dedicated a considerable portion of his life to researching the house. His journal was filled with meticulous notes, newspaper clippings, and sketches of the house's intricate details. He documented every rumor, every odd occurrence, and every unexplained death connected to the house. His obsession with the shunned house had consumed him, ultimately leading to his untimely demise. His final entry, written in a shaky hand, spoke of a horrifying discovery within the house, a discovery that had cost him his sanity and, ultimately, his life. The journal led me down a rabbit hole of historical records, ancient deeds, property transactions, and even court documents. The house had changed hands numerous times over the centuries, each transaction marked by tragedy or unexplained misfortune. The original owners, a wealthy merchant family, had perished in a fire that consumed the house. Their servants, driven mad by the flames, leapt to their deaths from the upper windows. Subsequent owners reported strange illnesses, accidents, and untimely deaths. It was as if the house fed on the life force of its occupants, leaving behind a trail of despair and ruin. One name in particular appeared with alarming frequency in my research: Etienne Roulet, a French Huguenot who had fled religious persecution in Europe and settled in the New World. Roulet had leased the house in the early 18th century. His tenure was marked by whispers of strange rituals, unsettling chants, and the disappearance of several townsfolk. Could this be the key to unraveling the mystery of the shunned house? Was Etienne Roulet the source of the French whispers that haunted the house? The name Etienne Roulet sent shivers down my spine. He was like a phantom appearing and disappearing from historical records. His story was intrinsically linked to the shunned house, yet shrouded in mystery. I expanded my research, focusing on the Roulet family and their connection to the house and the surrounding area. What I uncovered was both fascinating and terrifying. It painted a picture of a family steeped in secrets and driven by something dark and ancient. Etienne Roulet, it turned out, had not come to the New World alone. He had brought with him his wife, Antoinette, and their two children, Jean-Paul and Cécile. The family had settled in a small village called Portuxet, a short distance from the shunned house. They kept to themselves, their customs and practices strange and unsettling to the Puritan townsfolk. Whispers of witchcraft and devil worship followed the Roulets like a curse. They were feared and ostracized, their presence casting a pall over the once peaceful village. My search for information about the Roulets led me to the Historical Society in nearby Providence. There, amidst dusty tomes and forgotten records, I stumbled upon a treasure trove of information. A collection of letters written in French chronicled the lives of the Roulet family during their time in Portuxet. The letters revealed a family haunted by tragedy and driven to desperate measures. They spoke of a curse that followed them from Europe, a curse that demanded a terrible price. The letters also hinted at a dark secret hidden within the shunned house, a secret that Etienne Roulet had gone to great lengths to protect. He believed that the house held the key to breaking the curse that plagued his family, but his efforts had been in vain. The curse had tightened its grip, claiming the lives of his wife and children. Driven to madness by grief and despair, Etienne Roulet had vanished without a trace. His fate, like so much else about the Shunned house, remained a chilling mystery. As I delved deeper into the history of the Roulet family, one chilling detail emerged: a name. Scrawled in the margins of one of Etienne Roulet's letters, written in a frantic, almost illegible hand, was the name Merwin. The name seemed to jump out at me from the page. It was as if Etienne Roulet, in his final moments of despair, was trying to convey a warning. But who was Merwin? And what was his connection to the Shunned house and the curse that plagued the Roulet family? I scoured historical records, searching for any mention of the name Merwin in connection to the Roulets or the Shunned house. My efforts were initially met with frustration. The name seemed to have vanished into thin air. Just when I was about to give up hope, I stumbled upon a small leather-bound volume tucked away in the archives of the Providence Historical Society. It was a diary, written in a spidery hand, its pages brittle with age. On the cover, faded but still visible, was the name Jonathan Merwin. The diary belonged to Jonathan Merwin, a carpenter who had worked on the construction of the Shunned house in the early 18th century. His entries were filled with mundane details about his daily life, the weather, the progress of his work, and the gossip of the town. But as I read further, a sense of unease crept over me. Merwin's entries grew increasingly erratic, his handwriting becoming more frantic. He wrote of strange dreams, unsettling premonitions, and a growing sense of dread that permeated the construction site. Merwin's diary revealed a dark secret about the construction of the Shunned house. He wrote of Etienne Roulet's obsession with the house and his insistence on incorporating strange and disturbing elements into its design. Roulet had provided Merwin with detailed plans and sketches, demanding that they be followed to the letter. Merwin, though uneasy about Roulet's demands, had been bound by his word and the promise of a handsome payment. He had unwittingly played a role in the creation of something evil, something that would have terrifying consequences for generations to come. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I returned to the Shunned house. The structure loomed before me, menacing and oppressive. It seemed to pulsate with a dark energy, as if it were a living, breathing entity, aware of my presence and wary of my intentions. Following the clues scattered throughout Merwin's diary, I made my way to the cellar. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and something ancient and unholy. The cellar was shrouded in darkness, the only light filtering in through cracks in the boarded-up windows. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something metallic and cloying. Fear, primal and suffocating, threatened to overwhelm me, but I pressed on, my grandfather's journal and Merwin's diary clutched tightly in my hand. They were my only guide in this descent into darkness. The floor was damp earth, soft and yielding beneath my feet. Cobwebs, thick as shrouds, brushed against my face. I could hear the scurrying of rats in the darkness, their tiny claws scraping against the stone foundation. The sound sent chills down my spine. It was as if the house itself were watching me, judging my every move. According to Merwin's diary, Roulet had insisted on a series of tunnels and chambers being built beneath the house. These were not for storage or any practical purpose. They were designed to channel and amplify some unseen force. A force that Roulet believed would break the curse on his family. Merwin had written of these chambers with a terror that bled through the pages of his diary. He had stumbled upon something down there in the darkness, something that had shaken him to his core. He never elaborated on what he had seen, but the fear in his words was undeniable.